Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, don't call him Dick Treasure. That's not his name. This is Richard Jewell. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Richard Jewell, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, thanks. Thanks in no small part to my new productivity system, which is called The Frog. Now, there's an old productivity philosophy out there you might have heard of called Eat the Frog, which says that if you've got one big onerous thing you have to do, such as eat a frog, you better do it first thing in your day while you got the strength, while you got the appetite. But I only partially paid attention when I heard someone repeating that. So I just picked up on the idea that if you have a big task to do, you get to think of it as a cute little frog. And that sounded really nice. Yeah. So that's what I do. Every day I pick one task from my list to be the frog. And then there's no rush. There's no plan. I just complete the frog by the end of the day. I've been doing this for a couple weeks, and the little green guy is helping me accomplish a lot of stuff. I'm a big fan of the frog.
I follow a system called the Scorpion, which goes on the frog's back across a river. Then he stings the frog, and I don't get anything done.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it really doesn't work out. But anyway, no, that's a good idea. I've kind of started following that without realizing it, in terms of I want to get all the bullshit out of the way first thing in the morning before I can enjoy the rest of my day. So I have kind of adopted that. But I wonder how this plays in France, where they eat frogs pretty regularly.
Oh, yeah. They're probably like, I don't want to indulge myself with treats first thing in the morning.
That's a dinner time food. I'm going to save that for the biggest meal of the day.
You got to earn the frog.
Yeah, but whatever is helping you be productive and feel accomplished, I'm in support of. So good job.
I appreciate that.
I'm just going to complain for a couple of minutes.
Go for it.
You're already aware of this. I'm sure when my wife Jamie listens to this episode, she will roll her eyes because I've been a giant baby about this whole situation. But I somehow tussled with the evilest of weeds, the poisonous ivy.
Oh, okay. Not marijuana.
No. It's
an even more evil weed.
That's the sweetest of the weeds.
Okay, sorry.
Sweet leaf, as Black Sabbath would say. Yeah, I don't know how or when or how. I said how twice because I'm just so itchy that my brain isn't functioning correctly. But yeah, I caught an old case of the poison ivy. I almost called in sick for this podcast, but I said, no, that's a ridiculous thing to cancel a podcast over. Just being itchy, kind of. I think I'm on the downslope of it, though. It's starting to fade in some spots, but I got a pretty decent case of it.
That sucks. That is pretty evil that those plants even exist. On the West Coast, we have poison oak, and it's kind of the same deal.
Everything you read about them just makes them sound more like a nightmare. Like, you can't burn them because the fumes will give you the rash. I was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
If you get the oil on your clothes, it can stay for years. If you don't, I mean, you should wash your clothes within a year.
Probably.
But if you say you want to wear the same jeans, you were pulling weeds in jeans or hiking in jeans, and you will pull them on again in a couple days, you could just get it all over again. Like, that oil stays on stuff for years if you don't wash it off.
It stays on your skin and spreads if you don't really get it off really good. It's really nasty.
Yeah, luckily I must have been wearing gloves when I was doing whatever it was that led to this, because I didn't get it on my hands. When I was a little kid, I actually got it in a cut, which it popped up on my eyelids, in between my fingers, inside my nostrils. That was like, I was like bedridden for 2 weeks.
That's awful.
Luckily, this is not that severe. It's just like the decent sized big purple angry rash on my leg and little dots here and there everywhere else.
Did you dispose of the gloves?
I haven't yet. I should.
Because based on what we just said, they could be like lurking around your garage and then transferring oil onto one thing to the next to the next.
Well, I haven't done any manual labor in a couple of weeks, so at least I haven't reinfected anything. And I didn't use any tools. I think I was just pulling weeds with my hands.
Okay.
I think I'm mostly in the clear, but just got to be careful.
Gosh, I hope you feel better soon. That's like a slightly humorous malady, but I'm sure it's no fun at all.
Yeah, you just want to set your skin on fire once in a while. It just gets to the point where everything's so itchy and you know you can't scratch it.
Awful.
Speaking of an itch you can't scratch, did you happen to watch anything that you wanted to share with the listeners? It's not the best, but it'll work.
You know, in our last episode, we watched Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li, a martial arts movie where the fighting was kind of mediocre and it wasn't filmed in a very inspired way. So I thought, what if I go back and watch a kung fu movie where the fighting is amazing and it's shot in a way that's super exciting and creative and hilarious? And that movie is 2004's Kung Fu Hustle, written and directed by and starring Stephen Chow, a true talent. And as soon as I put Kung Fu Hustle on, I instantly remembered why it's one of my favorite movies ever. I was only wondering why it's been so long since I watched it. The movie's just got it all. It's got action, comedy, it's got some drama, it's got some romance. It's even got a musical typical dance number with no music in it. And not only is the story great on the macro level, but like every moment between each of the characters, it's crafted with a little extra bit of zing. So it's like scene after scene, it just constantly delights you. Absolute banger of a movie, wall to wall great. And I just wanted to point out a parallel that I'm sure I'm not the first person to point this out, but it came to mind watching this time. Shaun of the Dead came out the same year, 2004. And it's kind of amazing how much Stephen Chow and Edgar Wright bring the same energy to filmmaking, the same sense of how to really use the medium dynamically and pack all this energy and fun and excitement into movies. And not to mention the resemblance between the hero duo in this movie, Chow and his big slow sidekick, Bone, and the familiar pair of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. They have kind of that same dynamic, which is, I'm not saying either one's copying the other. Those are very traditional comedy duo archetypes, but it's just amazing that those filmmakers were out there doing that great work in parallel in different hemispheres of the world. So if there's anyone out there who hasn't seen Kung Fu Hustle, you really need to step up and join the Axe Gang.
Yeah, that would make a great double feature, Shaun of the Dead and Kung Fu Hustle, because two movies that I guess you could call parodies, but technically function as a movie within that genre all on their own and just being like a really funny one.
Totally.
They know how to hit all the right beats to satisfy that part of your brain that you crave when you're watching those type of movies. I had a big blunder with Kung Fu Hustle for years. Whenever anybody would recommend it to me, I was like, I love that movie. And I realized I was talking about Kung Pao, Enter the Fist, which is another great Kung Fu parody movie, but a much sillier one than Kung Fu Hustle. And doesn't really kind of stand up on its own as a movie.
Easy mistake, though.
But then when I finally saw Kung Fu Hustle, I was like blown away. Are the sequels out? I haven't seen any of the sequels yet.
I don't know that there's any direct sequels to this. He continued to make movies, and the only other one I saw was Journey to the West.
Oh, it's coming out in 2026.
Oh, there's a Kung Fu Hustle sequel with the same character?
Yeah, Stephen Chow is making it.
That is cool.
With Jackie Chan, interestingly enough. Yeah, so
very interesting.
Seems like a much bigger budget for this one. No, only a $20 million. Oh, no, that's the first one. The sequel does not have a Wikipedia page yet, but yeah, there's several articles from April, May confirming that it is done. I guess there's a trailer out there, so you should check that out.
I didn't even know. Thank you for pulling that up. That is quite a delightful surprise for me.
The only reason I started asking about it is because there were so many news articles about Stephen Chow says it's coming, like he's working on it. You know, he's trying to get financing. And there's this studio interested, but then they dropped it, and then like it's kind of in limbo for a long time. But he was always persistent that he wanted to make it happen. It sounds like it finally is coming to fruition.
He was old for the character he was playing, even at that time. Like they call him the kid, or like certain characters refer to him as a youngster because he's playing the hero. But it's clear he's already like too old to be playing that hero. But it kind of works. It makes his character more pathetic, which he's supposed to be for most of the movie.
Yeah, I guess he was early 40s.
Was he already in his 40s?
He was already in his early 40s, and now he's 63. So he was 41 when that movie came out.
So awesome, though.
Yeah, really. If you guys have not seen Kung Fu Hustle, please check it out. It is a great time. You will not regret it. So speaking of somebody that was a little too old for the role he was playing, to somebody who's by a lot of people considered a little too young for the role of director that he was performing. It's not my smoothest segue, but we're talking about Kane Parsons and Backrooms, because I got my bitch ass to the movie theater finally to see the Backrooms. I fully admit I am no scholar on the internet lore surrounding the Backrooms. I did dabble in it slightly and just thought it was cool and creepy in a kind of meandering way.
Okay.
But the Backrooms, or I'm sorry, the movie is just Backrooms. The YouTube series is The Backrooms.
I see.
It really worked for me. It's pretty polished, pretty singular vision from, like I just said, a 20-year-old director, which is nuts. And I guess Kane Parsons did bring in some more seasoned screenwriters to help him craft the script and to turn it into more of a movie. And interestingly enough, the parts of the movie I felt worked the least were the ones that felt like they were doctored by a seasoned Hollywood screenwriter. These kind of tropey relationships, like Chiwetel Ejiofor, who's the protagonist ostensibly of the movie, has a therapist, which the movie takes place in 1990, and he's a struggling furniture salesman. It's like, how many struggling furniture salesmen were self-aware enough to go to therapy in the early 90s, right? But this gives him a chance to spell out his internal pain and motivations to another character without it being expository dialogue. It's actually serving a purpose now. But that's the kind of thing that feels like a young director would bring in a Hollywood screenwriter, go, why don't you just have him tell his therapist about it? But then his therapist also becomes a big character in the movie. And I don't know what I can really say about it without spoiling much, because it is a movie that has, it's not twisty, but you still don't want to give away the ghost, so to speak, of what's really going on in the back rooms. And the movie also doesn't necessarily spell that out for you, so it is open to some interpretation. We will obviously never get to discuss it on this podcast because it is a massive hit. A24's biggest movie ever by quite a margin at this point.
Impressive.
So he's already confirmed a sequel is in the works with Parsons attached to direct, so he's going to keep this train rolling. I know you're a Chiwetel Ejiofor fan. I also know you're a bit of a scaredy cat, but this is the kind of horror I think you would be fine with. It's definitely more creepy than scary.
I am a little scared of it, as I am whenever I hear that a scary movie is good. I usually assume that means it will be unsettling unsettling at least. So I feel a little dread, but I also do feel a lot of curiosity because I like the concept, the little bit that I know about it. So I might work up the courage to check it out.
I think you should. When I was going to the movies with my friend Tim, it was between that and Obsession. Obsession's a whole other type of beast. That's just a crazy gonzo bloodbath, I think. But Backrooms, much more cerebral, quieter. There are some scares, don't get me wrong, but nothing that I think you couldn't handle after 4 Blastobers under your belt.
I'm starting to develop those horror calluses.
Speaking of Blastober, let's talk about a blast in Centennial Park in Atlanta, Georgia.
My gosh, an American tragedy.
An American tragedy.
I don't mean this movie. This movie itself is not a tragedy. The story is a sad one, but this movie is hard to figure out what it is.
The movie is Richard Jewell from Clint Eastwood as the director. And Ian, I guess I'll start how I always start. What did you know about this movie before we started talking about it for the pod?
You know, I kind of remembered it coming out. I remember thinking, that doesn't look too interesting to me. I didn't know anything about Paul Walter Hauser at the time, who I'm now a fan of.
Not many people did, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like that was a huge miss for me, but he wasn't a draw to me. And so it just felt like, oh, this is going to be a cheesy biopic about some TV scandal from the 90s that I lived through and didn't really pay much attention to at the time and didn't feel like revisiting in the present. And I probably would have continued feeling that way about it until it was like, okay, now you got to watch it. And I'm like, oh, I actually like Paul Walter Hauser. So I was looking forward to it when I turned it on.
Yeah, he's become a fave of ours here. Off mic before we started recording this episode, I was giving you a reminder to check out The Luckiest Man in America, which is a movie I really liked that I watched a couple months ago. But I saw this movie's trailer, and Clint Eastwood was still pretty highly regarded as a director when this came out. Whether or not you feel like that's still the case today is up for some debate.
I like how you say that. Like, there wasn't one thing that happened. He just kind of fizzled in recent years, right?
He just made the same kind of movie too many times. I don't know. Was it Cry Macho or The Mule? I think it was The Mule, where he cast himself as the titular mule, and he has a threesome with a couple of like young Mexican mamacitas. And I was like, come on, Clint Eastwood, what are we doing here? You're fucking 90 years old.
I didn't know about the threesome, but I remember hearing about that movie and people going, he's just too old to play any kind of active protagonist in a movie.
Yeah, like he's just got to be a guy that sits in a seat. That's his role in every movie from now on. Not to besmirch the man's legacy, but in recent years, he's gotten old as fuck. I don't think that's a controversial statement.
No.
And I wasn't really familiar with the Richard Jewell story. Maybe the periphery of it, like I'd heard his name, I'd maybe heard some of the small details surrounding the situation, but outside of the O.J. Simpson trial, I don't think I was following any kind of like true crime news in the mid 90s because I was a child, like a real prepubescent child. But I had actually been a fan of Hauser's from I, Tonya, a movie that he made a couple of years before this one that he's really good in. So that was a little bit of a piqued my interest, but then as these things do with these middle of the road adult dramas, I never made it happen. And then by the time I was thinking about watching it, I was like, well, now I have a podcast where I talk about movies that lost money, so I might as well just save it for that. And then there kept being like more interesting options to cover week after week until finally I was like, you know what? Let's just fucking do this. And Hauser's having a moment right now. He's popping up everywhere. We'll get into that more. He's a bit of a renaissance man right now with his career. So it felt like a good time to revisit this one. And I'm glad I did because I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I say hesitantly. I kind of liked it too. I had a huge difference of opinion about this movie between the first and second watch. The first time through, I was like, this movie is so subversive. It's fucking with me so hard. What is Clint Eastwood doing? He's like my weird uncle who I can't tell if he's clowning me or being earnest or joking. And I think I met the movie on its level the second time through. And it's like a pretty good little slice of recreated American history dramatized on screen that's mostly earnest. But the thing is, like, the movie is intentionally funny in parts.
Yes.
Because Clint Eastwood has a sense of humor. And it's as much as you think of him as maybe being a super earnest guy, especially when it comes to sort of, I don't know, patriotism and cops and heroes and USA shit. You're like, oh, he's just going to be really straightforward and earnest. But then you remember, like, Clint Eastwood has a really dry, wicked sense of humor. And so, like, I couldn't tell what was supposed to be funny in this movie and what wasn't, at least until the second pass.
Yeah, I think after my first watch, I texted you and I said that felt like a very effective, high budget Lifetime movie. And what I meant by that was like, it's just trying to get from point A to point B. Here are the facts. This is what we know happened. And we're just going to show them without too much of an agenda, although there is an agenda that leaks through occasionally we'll have to get to. But yeah, pretty straightforward. I don't think he's trying to be subversive at any point in this movie. I think he is just presenting the facts of the case in a way that reinforces his worldview. I think it's easy to assume with Clint Eastwood, like you said, everything's going to be rah, rah, rah for America. But I did a little digging into his personal politics, and they're a little more nuanced than I had thought. He's obviously a registered Republican. He's spoken at the RNC before, but he's voted against the party's primary candidate in the last several elections, by whom I mean, of course, Trump.
Okay.
Does not appear to be a fan fan of him or his breed of politics, if you want to call it that, which warmed me to him a little more than when I started this whole process.
Sure.
The movie, I think, is very earnest. I think the comedy in it comes from both the fact that Paul Walter Hauser is a naturally funny guy, and this character is also funny in some very surprising ways, sometimes on purpose and sometimes not. But it did keep the movie from being boring, which is a crazy thing to say when Sam Rockwell's in the movie, that it was really this kind of unknown actor at the time saved the movie from being boring. But I don't think Sam Rockwell really elevates this material as much as I would have thought.
Yeah, he's surrounded by a really good cast, and none of them can do that much with it, but I really kind of blame the script.
Yeah.
I agree that from scene to scene, the way the drama is written is pretty pedestrian. It is just, it's hitting all the cliches about cop stuff, about newspaper reporter stuff, about lawyer stuff. They're all just straight out of the book. There's very few moments where it's actually surprising and refreshing, and maybe we'll touch on some of those scenes where I was like, oh yeah, now I'm liking this movie because something is happening that I couldn't have predicted and written for you the exact same way it's on screen.
There were some moments that were actually so cliche that they circled back around to the point where I was like, I can't believe they're doing this.
Yes, I think
in 2019, like, yeah, you know exactly the one I'm talking about. I called it out in one of our first texts after we both saw the movie. But yeah, it almost was like refreshing, but I feel like we're starting to get into the minutia of it. So do you want to hear about how this movie happened before we get too deep into the weeds?
For sure. Let's hear how this thing happened.
The first half of the 1990s was characterized by a greater than normal frequency of high-profile domestic terror attacks in the United States. From the Unabomber, Oklahoma City, several attacks on abortion clinics, and the burgeoning career of Rob Schneider, Americans were living in a constant state of fear.
Tough times.
But a July 27, 1996 attack at Centennial Park in Atlanta, Georgia, during the Summer Olympics had the potential to be one of the deadliest. Luckily, a security guard named Richard Jewell spotted an abandoned backpack under a bench next to the NBC Sound Tower. Jewell took immediate action, alerting authorities and helping to evacuate the area. Surely he was hailed as a hero, and nobody set out to ruin his life.
You're not kidding. He was a hero.
JK, Jewell was identified by the FBI as a prime suspect for planning the bomb due to his psychological profile and, let's say, colorful past.
Colorful past.
The media picked his life apart, and it wasn't until late October of 96 that he was ruled out as a suspect. Jewell passed away in 2007, but spent 11 years between the bombing and his death working in law enforcement and giving speeches at colleges about his experience.
It sucked, you guys.
The case had largely faded from the collective consciousness of Americans by the 2010s, but the unlikely pair of Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill teamed up in 2014 with the intention of producing a film based on the incident and its aftermath, with Hill playing Richard and Leo playing G. Watson Bryan Jr., a real estate lawyer hired by Jewell to help exonerate him and navigate the media circus surrounding him.
Sounds like a titanic job.
Paul Greengrass was in negotiations to direct the film, with lauded screenwriter Billy Ray handling the script. Ezra Edelman, who directed the excellent 2016 documentary O.J. Made in America, and famed dickhead David O. Russell were also considered as possible directors, but this version of the film never materialized. DiCaprio and Hill backed away from starring in the film, but stayed on as producers, and Clint Eastwood was eventually announced as the director in early 2019. Warner Brothers acquired the project from 20th Century Fox in May of 2019, and Sam Rockwell and Paul Walter Hauser were cast in the Leo and Hill roles, respectively.
I auditioned for a play, and I got the part.
With a reported $45 million budget, Eastwood brought on heavy hitters like Jon Hamm, Olivia Wilde, and Kathy Bates to round out the rest of the cast. Filming began on June 14th, 2019, and wrapped up by August 1st, with a release date of December 13th, 2019 set. The movie was released, and all the critics agreed that it was fine. Pretty okay, I guess. Hauser was singled out for praise, but the film's release was not without its own controversy. Kathy Scruggs, the Atlanta Journal reporter who first broke the story that Jewell was considered a suspect by the FBI, had sadly passed away in 2001, but that didn't stop the filmmakers from portraying her as a huge immoral asshole willing to sleep with sources to get stories. Scruggs' friends and colleagues rushed to her defense and demanded a disclaimer be added to the film that the events portrayed were heavily fictionalized. Warner Brothers, Eastwood, Hauser, and Wilde all defended the movie's portrayal of Scruggs, and no real resolution was ever reached, casting a bit of a dark cloud over the movie. And if the Scruggs situation didn't put a damper on enthusiasm for the movie, the box office returns certainly did. It opened in fourth place with $4.7 million, with fellow new release Jumanji: The Next Level taking the top spot, and the fourth and third weeks, respectively, of Frozen 2 2, and Knives Out taking second and third place.
I do declare.
It dropped 45% to 7th place in its second week as the terrible but highly profitable Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker debuted, and the terrible but not at all profitable Cats also debuted and took 4th place. Jewel got a Christmas bump, increasing its returns 19% in its third week, but it eventually left theaters with only $44.6 million earned worldwide, leading to a roughly $20 million loss for Warner Brothers. The movie is mostly forgotten now, except in profiles of Paul Walter Hauser, where it's lauded as his breakout role, even though that was really I, Tonya. And in solidarity with critics, we at the Blast Zone think it's fine. Pretty okay, we guess.
It's fine.
Pretty okay, I guess.
Interesting competition. It's interesting that it got that Christmas bump because it does feel like that kind of movie that, I don't know, middle-aged and old people are going to go out to see.
The boomers. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of nostalgic. It's kind of like, hey, I lived through that. I remember that weird guy was on the news all the time.
The first hour of the movie is almost like a rotating carousel of musical acts you faintly remember from the mid-90s. You got Kenny Rogers doing a live performance of The Gambler.
Yeah.
You've got, what is it, Jack Mack and the Heart Attack?
Yes.
There's an extended Macarena sequence. Like, it is very nostalgic, yeah.
That's true. I guess he was doing some fan service on the musical nostalgia there to kind of set the setting. Because other than that, 1996 doesn't feel too different.
No.
You can't really tell based on the fashion or...
The arcade is a little dingier. The games aren't as impressive. But yeah, it does feel like they didn't put a lot of time and effort into making it feel like a period piece. I think the 90s are kind of a weird spot for period pieces. I don't know if they're more expensive to make a 90s movie than like a 70s movie, just because prop warehouses were much more productive in those early days, and maybe there's just more stuff for those years. I don't know.
I wonder, there's this theory going around that culture stopped moving forward and probably stopped around the 90s or just after, right? Like they say you used to be able to spot people's manner of dress and stuff by decade very accurately, and now everyone dresses in a totally nondescript sense that can no longer be pinned down. Everyone employs some degree of nostalgia for every different decade simultaneously.
I guess if I was trying to dissect that a little more, I would argue it's mainly due to like streaming right. Music, streaming movies and television shows. Because however the characters on Friends were styled in the mid 90s is how people were going to dress and get their hair done. But there's really not any one piece of pop culture you can point to now that everybody watches this thing, except for like Game of Thrones, which I don't think people are going to go out and buy a fucking suit of armor. So that monoculture is missing now, which I think dictated a lot of the more trendy flash in the pan fashion that we used to see.
Yeah. And young people have the opportunity to immerse themselves in all different time periods.
Yeah.
Like when I was young, there was like only one thing you could go back to. Like in the 70s, you could go back to the 50s and the 60s in the 70s and 80s. But like now you can just go backwards and forwards freely, and you do at all times.
Yeah, it's a much more tailored to your personal interests cultural landscape now.
So yeah, Kenny Rogers is like the one big cultural anchor to this, that, and the literal anchors on screen, the news anchors, seeing Tom Brokaw's face in real footage that they pull up. And so that sort of sets
I think that was supposed to be Brian Gumbel in another scene? Like they got another guy playing him?
Oh, yeah. Yes, he interviews on the Today Show with Brian Gumbel.
That wasn't Brian Gumbel, obviously, but yeah, they did a good job, though. I knew who they were going for.
Yeah, that was good casting and well done. But yeah, it doesn't feel too dated, which helps it feel relevant. It's just the core thing about this movie is that it's about a weird guy.
It's about a weird little freak, yeah.
As earnest as Clint Eastwood wants to be about his story, to say, here's a man who tried to do good and he was wronged by the media, by the law enforcement apparatus. The thing that the movie has to do is to get you to feel sympathy for this guy, and all the social cues in our society tell us to mock this man mercilessly, right? He represents all these stereotypes that people love to hate on or make fun of. He's overweight, he's soft-spoken, he's a mama's boy, he worships authority, he power trips when he gets power.
Lives at home.
So in essence, the movie isn't trying to do anything subversive except that one thing, which I think is actually kind of big. To get you to feel empathy for Richard Jewell is a big ask. And on my second watch, I started to feel it.
Yeah, I think the movie succeeds there. The characterization of Jewell is something really interesting that we'll have to dive into a little more as we go through it, because he really is just a bundle of contradictions in a lot of ways. And you have to wonder if that was Eastwood and Billy Ray realizing they had to mix in some fiction with the reality to make this guy palatable for 2 hours and 10 minutes, or are real people sometimes just hard to pin down.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy did contain all these multitudes. I don't know enough about him to say one way or the other, but I'm interested in finding out. I might pick up some of the books that they referenced when they were writing the script, see what they have to say about about them?
It's really interesting. It tweaked me. We'll get into it because I'm used to laughing at and with Paul Walter Hauser. And so I was wrong-footed for this movie where sometimes it is funny the way he acts. And it's like there's natural humor and comedy that occurs in his life. But that's not the point of this. And so it took me some work to get on the right footing.
There's about 15 minutes of the first hour where he's actively just trying not to shit his pants, which doesn't help the kind of tonal clashes that you're talking about.
Clint Eastwood pushing boundaries with that stuff.
Diarrhea is no laughing matter usually, but when it's a guy like laying on his bed in his mom's house going, my tummy.
I told you not to eat that fast food.
Mama, my tummy feels like two monkeys having a knife fight. Should we start talking about the plot so we can get into some of these issues more in depth?
Absolutely.
All right.
It's 1986, and an ambitious young man named Richard Jewell, played by Paul Walter Hauser, works as an office supply clerk at a Georgia law firm. Richard is a keen observer, but he's overeager and obsessive about his job, which rubs many of his coworkers the wrong way. In one lone exception, he's befriended by a gruff lawyer named Watson Bryant, played by Sam Rockwell. But Richard's dream is to work in law enforcement, so he leaves the firm to take a job in security. Bryant admonishes him, don't become an asshole cop, but Richard can't help who he is. Flash forward 10 years. It's 1996, and Richard is now a former sheriff's deputy working as campus security at nearby Piedmont College. Even there, he repeatedly oversteps his authority, harasses students, and eventually gets himself fired by the college president. Richard is forced to move in with his mom, Bobby, played by Kathy Bates, and take a temporary event security gig for the Atlanta Summer Olympics. But it does have some upside as Richard gets to bring Bobby along to Centennial Park to see her favorite artist Kenny Rogers play. 2 nights later, Richard is back working park security as more bands take the stage. Richard kisses up to the various cops and state and federal agents also working that night, but he struggles to be accepted as one of them. He also struggles with a bad case of the runs from some fast food he ate earlier. Nevertheless, nothing can suppress Richard's sharp eye, and he spots a suspicious abandoned knapsack near the concert's control tower. He warns the cops, who aren't convinced it's a threat, but he's insistent, and he convinces them to bring over a bomb expert. Sure enough, the bag contains a huge pipe bomb. Richard and the cops leap into action to clear workers and the public as far from the bomb as possible. But while they struggle to expand the perimeter, the bomb detonates, killing 1 person and injuring more than 100 others.
Real action-packed first hour and first act. We should start with Paul Walter Hauser as Richard Jewell. We've already praised him pretty effusively. I guess we could just do a little bit more of that.
Yeah. So I went back, I watched a few clips of the real Richard Jewell, because obviously there's a lot of footage. He was going on talk shows left and right during this time, and they really nailed the look and the feel. Hauser does a great job. He sounds just like him. He looks just like him. There's a scene in the movie where they put the real Richard Jewell on TV in the background while he's being interviewed, and you'd never
tell. Yeah, you'd never know that it's not him. It's uncanny.
It's seamless.
And like, thank God he's a great actor as well, because part of you wonders, is Clint Eastwood cast him just because he looks so much like this guy? But he's absolutely able to pull off the role and make himself both a sympathetic figure and a guy you kind of want to slap sometimes.
Absolutely. That's definitely the point of it. But I tell you, my first pass through the movie, I had a really different feeling. I was like, I'm sorry. I love Paul Walter Hauser. I could not take him seriously. From beginning to end, I was like, he's joking me, man. What's going on here? This is like intentionally, unintentionally comedic the whole time. But I don't think that was a failure on his part. I think maybe it was a failure on my part.
I'm not even sure that's not what you're supposed to take away from it, because it's kind of a running theme that nobody takes Richard seriously.
Yeah.
So why should you, as the audience, take him seriously? We're shown he's pretty pathetic in a lot of ways. Mostly like he was kind of a lovable loser up until right after Sam Rockwell says, hey, don't be an asshole when you get your first taste of power. Smash cut to him forcing his way into a dorm room, physically and verbally assaulting 2 kids for drinking beer in their own dorm room. And they weren't even making any noise. They weren't even being loud. It's just a complete abuse of power. And like, that's what I was talking about when I said, is it inconsistent characterization, or is the real Jewell just as confusing of a person? Because he seems like the epitome of this kind of policing style that became so prevalent during the war on drugs, which is like us versus them. These neighborhoods are occupied territory, to quote Bunny Colvin from The Wire. Mm-hmm. They're not the neighborhoods we're supposed to be helping. He comes off so strongly in that sense. But then you see him handing out water bottles to a pregnant woman just from the goodness of his own heart at Centennial Park. And it's like, I don't know what to make of this guy. I can't really figure out where he lands on the spectrum of flawed asshole or mostly decent guy who's just got a weird relationship to authority.
It works for me as a complex characterization that the same guy who loves his mom and will do anything to keep her safe and happy and stops pregnant women in a crowd to make sure they have some water to drink is also just so gung-ho about law enforcement and not letting anything slip through the cracks that he's pulling over people on the highway outside of the campus.
That was nuts. He's a campus security guard doing car stops for to give breathalyzers off campus for cars he thinks are going to the college. Yeah. Wild. And then there's hints that he's already been arrested once before for impersonating a police officer. We don't really get into the details of that. What does he say? It was a misunderstanding. I was like, I don't understand how that is true. But so he's got a real authoritarian streak to it. But then, yeah, he's capable of being very thoughtful and very generous at the same time. It makes for a really unconventional protagonist because he has all these things in equal measure and it kind of bats you around like a pinball.
And you go, are there really guys like that?
There absolutely are.
But yeah, I think you have to come to the conclusion in the end that there are and that he does a pretty good job of playing him. But because he's a meek guy, at least for most of the movie when he's around people that he considers superior to him, which is like the FBI and such, and his mama, that it ends up being fairly subtle, right? You have to kind of dig in a little bit to catch the nuance in that. In contrast to the Jamie Taco sketch, where he is fucking letting you have it, man. I mean, if you want to see an acting tour de force, turn on season 2, episode 4 of I Think You Should Leave. Right at the top is the sketch officially called Wife Joke, but most people would know it as Jamie Taco.
Everyone forgets the framing device of that sketch is that he's at a sleepover with his friends, and they're all like, the youngest one's got to be like mid-30s. The rest of them are like up into their 60s.
Yeah, they're older dudes.
And they're just mad at him because he won't sleep over. He never stays over.
Because he feels the peer pressure to make a joke about, my wife.
And it's also it's the lamest, like least harmful joke anyone's ever said.
It's like, I'm plugging a lot of these beers. If you had my wife, you would be too, or something, right? And then he just immediately regrets it so hard that he insulted his wife in front of the boys and he has to go home.
I know it's really fun for people when you recount a comedy sketch verbally. That's always a fun experiment and people seem to really enjoy it. But I really do love how everyone's laughing at his joke and he just quietly, shouldn't have said that.
It's so good.
And it turns into this kind of, oh man, he's so funny in that sketch.
In that sketch, which is, like you're saying, most of the sketch is a cutaway montage of why he feels as strongly as he does about his wife and how she supports him through this difficult experience he had with the play that he auditioned for.
Playing Goon number 2.
It's a really rapid montage type thing. And yet the feeling that you get about the real love between this man and this woman is so real and intense. It's fantastic acting on everybody's part. The wife is great in it too.
Yeah, I'm kind of probably going to watch it once we're done recording this episode now. I haven't seen it in a couple months. It's great. Man, he really is like one of my favorite actors working right now because I just kind of a couple months ago, I finished watching this show he did called Blackbird with Taron Egerton for Apple TV Plus. And he's playing kind of like a similar character, but a brutal serial killer, but also like kind of meek. But you get the sense throughout all of it that he's kind of playing possum a little bit to try to like, it's a really nuanced performance. The show itself was like B- maybe, but his performance is like A+, worth watching. And they also kind of treat him like the shark from Jaws a little bit, where like you see glimpses of him in the first episode and everyone talks about him, but you never really spend any time with him. And then when you finally do, it throws you for a loop because he's so kind of soft-spoken and very Paul Walter Hauser-y. But then the darkness starts to creep in as the show goes on, and it's very interesting.
That's neat. I kind of want to check that out now.
And Taron Egerton is doing the most. His shows on Apple TV are just insane. I don't know what's become of him, but he's like, I'm just going to be the most egregious overactor in the history of television. And I'm here for it because he also did that show Smoke that I thought was like really bad in a really fun way.
Yeah, I don't know that one. But yeah, I did watch the first episode of Blackbird up to the point at least where his characters are introduced. And I think the over-the-topness of the whole vibe I was getting kind of put me off for the show.
I understand. I stuck with it for Hauser, and that was really the main reason too. But like you eventually do get onto Egerton's level and warm up to him for what he's doing because he is really almost like he might be like the next Nick Cage in that sense where he's just like in his own movie or TV show every time and you just got to adapt to it.
That's fun. I admire picking that lane and trying to run with it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the kind of intro to the movie, the 1986 sequence. We meet our major players. We meet Richard and we meet Watson Bryant, played by Sam Rockwell. He's a hotshot lawyer when we first meet him for the Small Business Administration. Am I getting that right?
I think that's right.
And he's got the 3-piece suit. He's a fast-talking Sam Rockwell type of guy. It's probably what the script said. And then lo and behold, they cast Sam Rockwell. Kind of abrasive, but with a little bit of a lovable charm underneath. movies.
Yes. Sam Rockwell's a favorite of mine.
One of the greats, yeah.
And I actually think he's really good in this, but I feel like that whole first, 10, 15 minutes of the movie, that whole sequence, it had a job to do, which is establish how these two became friends, which is important when they reconnect later.
Friendly, I would say, yeah. Not friends necessarily, but...
Yeah, a weird type of arm's length friends. But other than that, I just wanted to crumple that part of the script up and throw it out. Like,
yeah.
I felt like it was so underwritten. And obviously, if you know the word on the street about Clint Eastwood is that he shoots first drafts. He never wants to let his screenwriters rewrite anything, and he never wants to let his actors retake anything. He just gets a script and he's fucking shooting and moving on.
Look, the man's 94. He's got places to be.
He doesn't have time.
He's got to go to the doctors. He's got medications that he has to take on a strict schedule. Yeah, you do wonder if they could have just explained their relationship later on and cut this whole part, because it really doesn't do much for the movie.
It's the weakest part, and it gets you off to a kind of a bad start, because I'm like, oh, Sam Rockwell's kind of weird. Everyone's awkward because the scenes just aren't that well written. So you kind of see what they're doing. Oh, they're finding a way for them to bond over each other's quirks, but it felt like a rough draft to me. So I was really glad later on when Sam Rockwell's character blossomed and his interactions with Paul Walter Hauser. There's a couple scenes late that are just my favorite parts of the movie. I'm like, okay, I'm really getting my Sam Rockwell fix, but I was not getting it in the first part.
The one thing I will say that the 86 sequence establishes that's important is Richard's attention to detail,
right.
Almost to like, maybe this isn't the most PC way to say this, but like almost to an autistic level of noticing things. I saw a Snickers wrapper in your drawer, so I got you 8 Snickers bars.
He's a weirdo, and you get why Watson Bryant is the only guy in the office that can tolerate that. Everybody would be like, what, you saw Snickers in my trash and you filled my drawer with that? What are you doing, dude? Back off. But Bryant, you believe that he's just weird enough himself that he can deal with Jewell's weirdness, and they kind of hit it off.
And he does play it in a way where you sense that Bryant is a little wary of Jewell and kind of keeps him at arm's length to some extent, but is like kind of willing to take the chance that he's fundamentally decent underneath. But he is like a little weirded out by him.
He is. Yeah. He's not inviting him over for dinner. He's just being encouraging and friendly to him at the office and trying to help the guy out. And then he gives him like $100 when he says, I'm leaving, but that was like not set up at all, that he needed money.
Yeah, I didn't really get what was going on there. I think that might have been just a contrast with what we see of Bryant's situation later. Like, he was living high. He was the hotshot lawyer.
Okay.
And then he's kind of a loser later.
Yeah, but he was a hotshot lawyer, but he was in a cubicle on an office floor, like with everybody else. So he was
for the government too. Like, they don't pay you the big bucks to be a government attorney.
Yeah, I was wondering, was that done for like filmmaking convenience so that the office boy supply clerk could stumble onto his loud conversation and have them meet each other that way? Because like, why is the 3-piece suit guy in an open cubicle?
It is a confusing sequence because none of it really makes sense in the world we inhabit.
Exactly.
You kind of have to take the movie at its word that this is what happened, which is a dangerous game, as we find out with Kathy Scruggs. We mentioned in the monologue that a lot of people took issue with her portrayal in this movie, but she's not really a part of this yet in a big way. We'll for next sequence.
No, we see a couple faces that we're saving for Act 2, but Act 1 culminates in the big inciting incident of the movie, Centennial Park.
Yeah, diarrhea. That's what causes it. Now, Richard is working security at Centennial Park for the Olympics, and this is another thing that made me want to read the book, because Richard can't just be good enough at his job to spot a rogue backpack and be like, wait a second. He's got to spot he spots the actual bomber in the audience.
Does he? I don't know if I spotted that.
Did you guys see that guy with the ponytail? Does his ponytail look weird to you? I'm going to follow him. And it's, unless I'm wild, the guy's wearing sunglasses. He looks just like the guy that makes the phone call to 911. I'm pretty sure he sees the actual guy. He doesn't see him plant the bag, but he tries to follow him, but can't keep up with him. So I was like, now the movie's making him seem almost like superhumanly good at being a security guard.
He's either superhumanly good or superhumanly paranoid, because I can't remember exactly how it goes down with spotting the bag, which is intentional because later
the kids he chases away were like looking at it. The kids that were drinking, he goes and gets the cops because they're not leaving. When he comes back, the kids run away and he notices that they were like looking at a bag.
They were messing with the bag, but he saw the bag before he saw them, and he was distracted by the thing. And that's all plays in later when the FBI is like, and you can't remember the exact timeline of when you first saw the bag. And we know that it was chaotic, but he chases another guy who looks like the bomber, who turns out to be a totally false alarm, who pops some Budweisers out of his bag for his bros. Remember that?
Oh, maybe that's what I'm misremembering. Yeah.
But then the real bomber shows up, and whether Richard sees him, we see him, the camera sees him for a moment. It looks like exactly the same guy. It's another guy with a cap and glasses and a ponytail.
Yeah, they did make them look very similar. They fucked me up, clearly.
Yeah, it's confusing. I mean, it's the fog of war.
And the fog of Richard's diarrhea farts.
That's the thing. Here's this guy like, oh, you're not supposed to laugh at the big guy, but clearly you are. Like, it's funny. funny. He's having a discussion with some cop friend of his, like, go home. You got the shits. And he's like, no, I'm fine. I think I gotta run to the bathroom now.
I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that between the time where he tells his friend, like, I gotta go to the bathroom, and he doesn't get a chance to take a shit till like 9 a.m. the next day. I was like, what happened? Did it just, I don't know, dissipate in his tummy? How does that work? I don't understand. Because he immediately goes into cop mode when he sees these kids, then he sees the bag. It's not like we lose time where he could have taken a shit.
No.
I hate to bring it up, but the movie makes a real big point that he had diarrhea that night.
I felt like he got one. Clint didn't put it on screen, but I felt like he got one trip to the porta potties in before all hell broke loose, but I'm not sure now.
I've had some unfortunate times in my life, like just having poison ivy or like getting injured. I've never had diarrhea in a porta potty. I can't imagine the indignity at that moment.
Yeah.
That sounds like the worst fucking thing I could imagine.
It was the worst thing that happened to Richard Jewell until the bomb went off.
Until the next worst thing. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about, or should we get into Act 2?
Well, can I admit something?
Yes, please.
I suffer from something. I don't know if it's just me or if there are more like me, but I have an experience that I call bomophobia. And when I knew that a bomb was going to go off in this section of the movie, I was freaked out. My anxiety went through the roof, and I tried turning the movie down and like watching it quietly just so that I wouldn't freak out when I got the scary shock of a loud explosion. And I tried fast forwarding it a little bit, but then it turned out the part I was fast forwarding was still like 10 minutes before the actual bomb went off. So like that wasn't productive. And then I just had to turn the movie off for a while and psych myself up and go, okay, I'm going to put it on. I'm going to watch it through. I know that a bomb is going to go off in the next 5 or 10 minutes, but it's not that tense a movie. On my second watch, it was not scary or tense at all. But on that first watch, I created an unbearable level of tension.
I love that you started this whole story with, I'm not sure if I'm the only one that's scared of bombs. I think just about everybody's scared of bombs. I think you might be more scared of bombs than the average person. When you were a kid, they weren't still doing bomb drills in school, were they? Well, that was the Cold War, 70s. You were still in the Cold War, right?
Yeah, there was still definitely the threat of nuclear war. Like I felt that as a kid, and maybe it was just an excuse. I'm just realizing this now. Because it was LA, they trained the kids on earthquake drills. And maybe that was
probably, two birds, one stone situation.
Yeah, we don't have to call it nuclear Holocaust drills. It's just an earthquake. They ring the bell and you get under the desk and cover your head. And it's the same thing.
Now they get to do active shooter drills, which is great. God. It's fun times.
It is real for those kids. I thought I had it bad, but that's rough.
My kids don't even think twice when they're like, oh yeah, we had an active shooter drill.
Damn.
They don't call it that. There's another term. I can't remember off the top of my head, but that's what it is. It's fucked up. Yeah. Maybe cut that. I don't know. That seems too dark.
It does seem dark.
Yeah, no, I think being scared of bombs is totally fine and normal, Ian. I don't think you're like a freak for not wanting to get exploded.
I should be able to tell the difference that a bomb going off in a movie on my iPad is not going to kill me, and it should probably not even really startle me at this point.
Look, Ian, with the way technology is today, who's to say? Oh, I started it over again. Now Ian's going to be scared again.
Damn it.
All right. Let me get on to Act 2 before I cause any more phobias.
Thank you.
In the immediate aftermath of the bombing, word gets out that Richard was the one who spotted the bomb and prevented a much worse tragedy. He's called a hero by the media and interviewed on the Today Show. When he's offered a book deal, Richard calls up the only lawyer he knows, Watson Bryant, to ask for help. Bryant tells him not to sign anything. That's all lawyers do, is tell you not to sign things. Meanwhile, the FBI agent in charge of the case, Tom Shaw, played by Jon Hamm, is forming a different opinion of Richard. Shaw talks to the Piedmont College president, who paints a picture of Richard as an unhinged attention seeker. Behind the scenes, Shaw starts to build a case against Richard as a suspect who fits the profile of a lone wolf attacker seeking fame and glory. Unfortunately, the FBI's investigation doesn't remain a secret for long, thanks to the efforts of Kathy Scruggs, played by Olivia Wilde, a hard-driving crime reporter at the Atlanta Journal. Scruggs trades sex with Agent Shaw in exchange for him telling her the name of the FBI's top suspect, and she's lauded the next day when the Journal publishes her scoop, instantly changing the public perception of Richard Jewell from the hero of the bombing to its suspected perpetrator. But before Richard has even heard the news, Shaw brings him down to the FBI offices under the false pretense of helping them film a training video. But after some awkward questioning, Richard finally catches on that they're interrogating him. He stops answering questions and insists on being allowed to call Watson Bryant, who immediately yanks Richard out of there. But there's no relief at home, as Bobby's apartment is now surrounded by a swarm of reporters day and night. After a look at the facts and a heart-to-heart talk with Richard, Bryant is convinced of Richard's innocence, and so he goes to work to defend his friend and client. But it's tough going, as new and incriminating details of Richard's life come to light, and Richard can't stop being deferential to the cops, even as FBI agents execute a deeply invasive search warrant, carting away box loads of his and Bobby's belongings, and leaving behind listening devices to spy on their conversations. All of this takes an emotional toll on Bobby, and when Richard gets short with her, she has a tearful breakdown. After apologizing to his mother, Richard tells Bryant he's ready to start fighting back.
That's a good moment, but we'll get get to it at the end of this act.
I let out a little audible cheer. Yeah. No, it was more like, yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. Let's talk about Olivia Wilde as Kathy Scruggs. What'd you make of her?
She's going for it. I can't picture that many other, I know I've seen Olivia Wilde and other stuff, but I didn't really have a strong opinion about what to expect from her. But I'm like, she's kind of ripping and running with this role, more so than anybody else that we talked about. Hauser has to play it very restrained. Sam Rockwell doesn't get to really dig in and chew the scenery until later. But Olivia Wilde is just going for it from square one.
We did get to see her in Cowboys and Aliens many years ago. She had a role in that movie, playing an alien, I believe, because she's got like an otherworldliness to her, I would say.
Yeah.
She's quite beautiful, but that's about where the compliments of her portrayal of Kathy Scruggs end for me.
Oh, you're not a fan?
I think the movie wants you to hate her, and it does a good job of that. She's a very hateable character in this movie. It gets complicated when you learn that everyone who knew and worked with Kathy Scruggs came to her defense and said she was not like that. It does, like, the Jon Hamm character is a composite character. I don't know why they had to just make her this person instead of fabricating somebody who could have filled in for dramatic purposes.
That would have been kinder to a dead woman to not make her the sex for story scene. It's just kind of really crude.
Yeah. She's really crude. There's one scene that I found even more despicable. And I know there's another scene you found really despicable, and I agree with you on that one.
Okay.
But there's a moment where it's not even like she's broken a big story yet, but one of her coworkers is like, "Oh, I don't think they like you very much," pointing to this group of very, I don't know, spinstery looking women in the newsroom. And she goes over and waves her middle finger at them. She's like, "Sorry, you dumb bitches, that my cool stories take up all the real estate on the newspaper. No one gives a fuck about you dumb assholes." And I was like, what? Like, why? They didn't say anything to you. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, that is kind of out of nowhere. And it's like, well, that's rude because it wasn't set up at all. There's no context for why she was acting that way. And then that contrast with later on, she gets the scoop. Shaw tells her the name and they publish it on the front page. And she walks into that same office and all those same people, everybody in the office stands up and gives her a standing ovation together. And that struck me as weird too, not just because she insulted them, but I was like, act like you've been there before. Like something gets published on the front page of the paper every day, and sometimes it's a scoop. Like, why is it such a big deal that they published a story that they got?
This isn't Spotlight. You didn't uncover a decades-long conspiracy. Like,
exactly.
This guy's a suspect in this crime. Oh, the guy who found the bomb is a suspect in the crime? No shit. And to his credit, Billy Ray does include several lines from Watson Bryant. Like, of course they're investigating Richard Jewell. He found the bomb. They'd be derelict if they didn't, which is pretty common sense in this scenario. So like, yeah, that whole scene felt very, I don't know, like an Aliens idea of what a newsroom functions like.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was talking about when like all the stuff that can be stereotypical, cheap cliches and tropes is, and that stuff is, some of it like that feels like, where did that even come from? They just plugged that in because that's a thing from movies like this.
Well, we got to get to my favorite example of that in this movie. And with that, we might as well move on to the, oh wait, you had another line. You had another bit about Olivia Wilde.
We can move on. I don't know.
Okay.
She's not even that big a part of the movie. And I think we trashed her enough.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, we're not trashing Olivia Wilde. We are trashing the character of Kathy Scruggs in this movie, which feels extra bad because there doesn't seem to be a lot of evidence that has anything to do with the real Kathy Scruggs.
They're just grinding the memory of Kathy Scruggs up for some artificial emotion in the movie.
And I guess to have an antagonist, but we kind of already have one in Agent Tom Shaw, played by Jon Hamm, who between this and The Town, I guess like the 2010s where he was just doomed to play boring FBI agents because this guy sucks.
He's more boring in this than I thought he would be. I expected Jon Hamm to bring a little more, and he did not bring the wild energy of Olivia Wilde, pardon the pun. He's just kind of there, I thought. Yeah. What did you think of his performance?
Yeah, he's very dry. They don't ever really give us a great explanation for why he has such a hard-on for Richard and is pushing so hard to keep him as the prime suspect. They make a couple throwaway lines about how he's got trauma because his fellow officers were injured and he was there to keep an eye on. He didn't do enough, but it's pretty thin. So he's not only not giving a super interesting performance, you don't understand his character's motivations most of the time.
Good point.
But he does get to be the most stereotypical FBI agent in movie history because the movie literally does the thing where a state cop's like, this happened in the state. I love how all these places give the most thin reasons for why they should have jurisdictions. It happened in the state of Georgia. We're the state police. It's our case. And then the ATF's like, people are drinking alcohol here and we're the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So it's our case. And then there's really like 4 agencies do this. And then Jon Hamm goes, you all can shut the fuck up. This is a federal case. FBI's taking it. And I was like, in 2019, we're still doing this? There were movies in the 80s that were mocking this whole sequence almost verbatim. I think The Naked Gun has a few examples.
And you're right, they speed run it. Instead of like it being a topic that comes up later, they're like, oh, we got to get this out of the way. There's a trope we got to do.
They're at the scene of the crime. The literal dust has not settled.
Yeah, exactly. And they go through one after another. And the whole scene takes 10 seconds and you just had the entire jurisdiction argument in the most like cliched.
There's no reason to have it. There's no reason to have that scene in the movie. Maybe you film it, but there's no reason to put it in the movie. The editor should have seen that and cut it immediately. It adds nothing except gives us some fun fodder to make fun of.
Yeah, they literally crossed the line into being goofy.
But then everything Jon Hamm as Agent Tom Shaw does from here on out is just like the most kind of underhanded, dirty cop shit. You know, having Richard come in, oh, we want to have you film a training video so we could help other people, respond so well to these kind of situations. And they're trying to get him to fucking waive his rights under false pretenses. Like, I'm no fan of the cops, but even I thought this was a bit much.
You were starting to feel bad for the FBI. Yeah, I think it's just kind of cheap. I love realism in movies, and I would love to hear the cop side of it and like actually feel why they're doing stuff that's questionable in terms of how far they're pushing Richard, but just give me a little more realism to it instead of just a really cheap explanation. They go in a meeting and the guy goes, one time, remember in LA, there was a cop who planted his own bomb and he discovered it. And so we think that's what this is. And then that's all we think. And we don't think anything else. And we're never going to investigate a damn thing except to just smear this one guy.
And then some higher up goes, do you agree, Agent Shaw? And Jon Hamm goes, I do. He goes, all right,
case closed.
Let's fuck this guy's whole shit up.
It's too heavy-handed.
Yeah. And I do think the one good thing that came out of this kind of FBI agent, there are some good scenes that come from their abuse of power a little later on, but it did reinforce that Richard is meek and very soft-spoken most of the time and very mild-mannered most of the time, but he's not stupid. He picks up on what they're doing almost immediately and refuses to engage with it, which I thought was helpful because the way the character's portrayed, you might think him a simpleton, but the movie's careful to never explicitly say that, and they do actually try to steer you away from that.
Yeah, I thought that was nice. I agree. That moment when he's catching on that they're treating him as a suspect and not a helpful training guy. Hero. He's still deferential to them. He's trying to play along, and you feel his pain as he realizes he can no longer play along, but he knows police procedure and he knows what's going on. So that's fun. That's fun to see that, him play that tension.
Yeah, I just appreciated that the movie doesn't try to make him out to be a moron. He's probably autistic.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. There are some exceptions to the really rote, stereotypical versions of the police procedural stuff. The scene where they come in and take hair samples off of Richard, his lawyer Bryant sitting there. And this is just a line that you don't expect. I never heard this in any other cop movie, but he's like, you might have a warrant, but if you were to try to do this to me, you'd have to fight me. You'd have to beat the shit out of me. And it's just like, obviously Sam Rockwell.
In a very Sam Rockwell way, yeah.
Being charming and funny, but also fresh. I'm like, oh, that's a real thing a real person might say in this obvious police procedural situations that are otherwise bog standard. And that was where the movie kind of was refreshing. And I started to really enjoy it.
I also think that after the search warrant is served, or is it when he takes the hair when Jon Hamm is leaving and he says something like cop to cop, because Richard's always saying, I just want to let them know I'm in law enforcement too, and I'm one of them. And Sam Rockwell starts chewing him out. Don't you know they're making fun of you? And Richard kind of lets loose for the first, like he raises his voice for the first time in the movie. Of course I know, but I can't help who I am. That's not who I am. That's why you're here. Like you have to do that for me.
Yeah, for me, that was the best part of Hauser's performance because there is a grand sort of speech he gives in the very climax at the end that wasn't my favorite part. But that part where he's like, why can't you get as angry as me? And he's like, I am angry. He's like, I don't know if anger is even a big enough word to describe what I am. And he's like, I know they're making fun of me and calling me Pillsbury Doughboy and all that. And that was like painful. I was like, oh man, that's as much as that man could show his emotion. And I really felt it.
Powerhouse stuff from Hauser. He's really good in this movie.
Yeah.
Oh man, I just got all emotional thinking about that speech.
Me too. I kind of choked up thinking of him saying that scene.
Yeah. Because the movie veers dangerously into misery porn for like this 45 minutes after the bombing. It's just like one indignity after another suffered upon by Jewell and by his sweet mother, played by Kathy Bates. It's just like they're embarrassed and attacked verbally and on the news. And like Tom Brokaw, who was established that Bobby loves, is like talking shit now. It's just one thing after another. And it does get a little monotonous. Maybe you could have cut one of these things.
Yeah, it does feel almost a little like they loop through the exact same point several times. But at the same time, like we're saying, that's where Rockwell comes alive. That's where Hauser comes alive. That's where Kathy Bates starts to come alive. And she goes even bigger in the third act, which is awesome. So you're kind of torn because it feels a little redundant, but also well. So that's where I started to really enjoy the movie.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. It is boring watching the cops trash Bobby's apartment and take Richard's hair and go through their trash for like 25 minutes. But then it leads to these big moments that absolutely work, and they probably wouldn't work as well without all that came before it. So yeah, it is a give and take.
Yep.
All right, you ready to get us home?
All right, here we go. Bryant's plan to fight back starts with giving Richard a polygraph test, which he thankfully passes. Then they march into the offices of the Atlanta Journal, where Bryant chews out Kathy Scruggs and demands a retraction from the managing editor. Then Bryant schedules a big press conference just to allow Richard's mom to vent to the media. Bobby gives a heartfelt speech about the innocence of her son and the pain they've been put through. In tears, she pleads for President Clinton to clear her son's name. And the campaign begins to change some people's minds, including Kathy Scruggs. Meanwhile, the FBI has still not arrested Richard, but they ask him to come in again for another interview. In the meeting, Shaw badgers Richard with accusatory questions until Richard finally hits his breaking point. Done with being deferential to the cops, Richard finally pushes back. He calls out Shaw for his lack of evidence and chastises him for persecuting someone who tried to help, while letting the real bomber continue to walk free. Sometime later, after nearly 3 months of investigation, Shaw hands Richard and Brian a letter saying Richard is officially no longer a suspect. Tearfully, Richard and his mom began the work of putting their lives back together. Then, a full 6 years later, as Richard has found work as a cop in a small town outside of Atlanta, Bryant drops in again to visit with a bit of good news. A suspect arrested in another case has confessed to the Centennial Park bombing, and Richard plans to go to his arraignment and see the real bomber brought to justice.
God, I forgot that even when Shaw hands Richard the letter saying he's not a suspect, he still goes, just for the record, I still think you're guilty as shit. And I was like, Jesus Christ, they cannot give this character any kind of redemption arc. He's just, I think what I landed on is Clint Eastwood likes cops, but he hates the fucking feds.
That might be it.
You know, like he likes the local cops who are trying to help their community, but he hates federal oversight. So,
which ironically is the profile of the actual Centennial bomber and most of the other domestic terrorists of that era.
I would like to publicly state right now that we are not accusing Clint Eastwood of being the Centennial Park bomber.
No, just an irony.
All right, let's talk about Bobby Jewell, aka Kathy Bates. Maybe our first time having Kathy Bates on the pod, and she's Kathy Bates, all right. She's bringing the heat.
Yeah, she's great throughout. Like we said, there's a part where she breaks down in the second act and goes to the bathroom crying.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
And Richard has to talk her down, and that's amazing. But this scene in the third act, when they stage the press conference, she just does a whole monologue pleading to Mr. President to clear my son's name. And that's clearly why she got the Best Supporting Actress Oscar nomination in this movie, because she is just bringing it.
Yeah, we should mention the only Oscar nomination for this movie was for Kathy Bates as Bobby Jewell. Hauser would have had to be a lead. It's kind of unknown at the time, but I think he kind of has a case.
It could have been. I don't know what the competition was.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the year to see how strong it was. Really good performance, though. I was very impressed with what he does here. Scruggs like just crying in the audience, though, while Bates is giving the speech, while Bobby Jewell is giving the speech. Felt like a bridge too far, trying to tie up too many loose ends in one scene. Like you were gleefully praying that whoever did this bombing was interesting, so it would make for good news. That doesn't translate to, now that I know this guy's innocent, I'm heartbroken of what he's been through. Somebody like that sounds like a shark to me, who would just move on to the next story and be out there chasing down leads for something else equally lurid.
Yeah, I think that's fair based on the way they characterized her so far, that she could have watched that press conference stone-faced and then went, "Pah," and walked out of the room with a huff. That would have been the really cold way to just drive the final nail in the Kathy Scruggs reputation coffin. But I think they were looking for a little redemption for her.
But yeah, they didn't give Shaw any, so they had to give one of the two.
That's true.
The two major antagonists of the movie are the news and the feds. Real Clint Eastwood shit.
I felt like that was actually Shaw's most honest moment, and maybe my favorite Hamm line in the movie, because he's just like, he's being real. He's like, I still think you're as guilty as shit because I got no better ideas. It was just kind of real to me.
Oh yeah, it felt true to the character. I was just like, geez, they don't want to give this guy any shot at redemption at all. It's easier to walk that line, though, when you're dealing with a composite character of several FBI agents.
Right.
And I was reading, I was like, I got to that part of the Wikipedia of Richard Jewell, and I was like, oh, like they were punished. And it was like one of them was suspended for 5 days without pay. I was like, well, fuck. That's kind of worthless, right?
That's typical cop punishment. Take a little paid vacation.
I think two got a letter in their file, and one got suspended for 5 days. It was like, great. You've spent 3 months fucking ruining this guy's life.
The leaking to the media was really worthy of some punishment. Like whatever other sort of sloppy investigation is maybe more forgivable in the heat of trying to bring somebody to justice. But there was no good reason to spill the beans on that because it only hurt their case and it hurt their investigation.
Now, once Jewell gets the letter in the diner, what did you think of the aftermath there?
Oh, man. Really big, bold choice from both Hauser and Clint Eastwood here. It's obviously an emotional scene. The guy has just learned that he's off the hook. Bryant kind of reads the letter for him. Is this real? Does that mean is it really over? And it's real. And Richard Jewell starts to cry. And Clint and Paul Walter Hauser, to fucking tweak us and to test our limits of empathy for a big, goofy dude, makes him bite two-handed into a chocolate donut as he breaks down in tears. Twice, he picks a donut off his plate and sobs as he takes a bite out of it. And I'm like, what are you doing here? You're really ripping the fat guy with the donut, cop donut, it's a whole thread
it's layers.
there.
There's layers to it.
And then, but it wants us to feel bad for this guy in that moment. And I'm like, do they know how subversive that choice was? Or was that just like what was on the table in the scene?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Maybe Hauser does, but Eastwood doesn't, is my take on it. But they do set up that Richard is an emotional eater in earlier scenes, like when after the cops leave, or there's some upsetting news. It's hard to remember which one because there's so many. Right. The second act of this movie is just a parade of cruelty, but where Richard kind of storms off and Brian says, if you go eat a fucking cookie, I'm going to slap you or something.
Yeah, I'm going to chop your hand off.
So they've established that Richard eats when he's under stress or feeling high emotion, but two-handed with a chocolate donut. It's a big donut too. It's not a small donut.
It's so pathetic because he's this big man hunched over this table and picking it up with both hands and bringing his head down to table level basically to nibble on this big messy chocolate glazed donut thing. It really tests you to not laugh but actually be with him in this moment of pain for him.
And learning everything we have about Richard Jewell in this movie, I still don't think he should be a police officer. So like the ending is also a little subversive too, because like we see him, he's got a badge on. He's not like an office worker. He's a cop.
He got a real cop job. Yep.
And sure, he was wrongfully accused and he did a good job of saving people from a bomb. He's still the same guy that was pulling people over when he wasn't even a cop and giving them breathalyzer tests on the side of the road. He's still the same guy who got arrested for impersonating a police officer. I feel like that should disqualify you from ever being a police officer.
That's a good point.
But does Clint know that?
Yeah, you do wonder because that's the reality is that cops who get fired or let go from police forces for egregious bad behavior and criminal violations often get jobs in small towns as cops. So it's like...
Yeah, the Catholic Church of the law enforcement agencies.
Yeah, so it's real. It's not unrealistic, but it's possibly unintentionally underlining that point about policing in America.
Yeah, I think the movie was pretty explicit about the fact that this man should not be near a position of authority. But maybe not. Maybe they weren't quite as aware of that as we thought.
But the movie does a good job because I was actually willing to look at his face in that moment, and this may be a testament to Paul Walter Hauser's acting. I was like, oh, he's grown. Richard Jewell has grown as a man because of that experience he went through, and he's just like a more together person than he was before.
The only way to find out is to check his file, see if there's any complaints for like excessive force filed against him after he was exonerated.
Poor guy. Didn't live that long to build up a file after that.
Yeah, only 11 years. He sued everybody, and they mostly settled. I think it was the Atlantic Journal didn't settle, or CNN didn't settle, and then the judge actually ruled in CNN's favor.
Okay.
But yeah, he went around, gave speeches about his experience. He said he really didn't make any money from all the lawsuits. It was all went to lawyer fees. But he was trying to prove a point. I don't know, maybe. Do you want to hear what happened to these people that made this movie, not Richard Jewell? That's too long of a story for now.
Yeah, we learned enough about Richard Jewell, but what about the filmmakers?
All right. So Clint Eastwood, I don't know if you've heard of him, up and comer, young buck.
Pale Rider.
We'll focus on him as a director, obviously, because if we focus on him as an actor, it would be a whole different spiel.
Okay.
He made his directorial debut in the 1971 neo-noir play Misty for Me, which was a hit. You seen that one?
I think I did see it ages ago.
It sounds interesting based on the plot synopsis. I would check it out.
Yeah, I should go back to that one.
He does routinely star in the films he directs, which we lamented regarding The Mule earlier, but it used to work out pretty well most of the time because he won 2 Best Director and Best Picture Academy Awards in movies he directed for 1993's Unforgiven and 2005's $1 Million Baby.
I somehow didn't put together that he had directed Unforgiven. I knew that was like this major achievement and comeback and redefine the Western for the modern era. Somehow I forgot that he was the director of that too. That's quite an achievement there with those 2 films.
That's how fucking old Clint Eastwood is when he made Unforgiven. People are like, wow, he restored his legacy. He can finally retire.
What a great final chapter. And then 30 years later, he's still making movies.
But Unforgiven absolutely fucking rips. That's a great great movie. I'm actually going to probably watch it in the next few days. Watching this movie, I was like, I should watch Unforgiven again. It's been like 15 years.
Totally.
He's directed 40 movies with some highlights including Sudden Impact, The Bridges of Madison County, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, great movie, Mystic River, Gran Torino, American Sniper, Sully, and Juror Number 2. I don't know if you remember, Juror Number 2 was not given a wide release in the US. That caused some controversy because it was pretty good.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember that.
It's with Nicholas Hoult. And he seems retired for now. The last movie he made was Cry Macho in 2024, I believe. 2021. No, hold on. Was that the last movie he made? No, Juror Number 2 was the last movie he made. What the fuck am I talking about? In 2024. Yeah, he's got nothing on the horizon as far as I could tell. I don't know if you know this. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but he's 96 fucking years old. So if he wants to take it easy and not spend any more time on sets, that is totally well earned.
Kudos to him, man. That man grabbed life by the throat. He started kind of late, right? He became a TV star on a TV Western, and he's already like 35, I think, when he sort of got his big breakthrough on TV. So he started late, but then he fucking squeezed so much out of his life after that. It's incredible.
Imagine starting, like, getting famous as an actor in your 30s and still being famous 60 years later and alive. Absolutely insane. Truly a remarkable career. We didn't even get into him as an actor. We'll have to cover one of his movies where he was the star so we can kind of talk about him more as an actor.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Written by Billy Ray. Ray got his start in 1994's Color of Night, and he's written a number of hits, including Flight Plan, The Hunger Games, and Captain Phillips.
Oh, cool.
He's also a solid director. He wrote the very underrated Shattered Glass. That was the Hayden Christensen movie about a reporter who plagiarizes a bunch of stories and gets caught eventually. It's quite good.
That real life guy. I remember that story.
Yeah. He did the very underrated 2007 spy thriller Breach and 2015's Secret in Their Eyes, which I didn't see, but I kind of want to now because he's directed 2 movies that I really liked. He has 2 movies that he's written set for release in 2026. He's going back to the Hunger Games. He's writing Sunrise on the Reaping.
Oh, boy.
Of course, directed by who? Francis Lawrence, the guy who just makes Hunger Games movies. He does one thing, he does it well. And the Ben Affleck crime thriller Animals, which I'm excited about.
I can't keep up with the number of crime thrillers that Ben Affleck puts out, whether he's directing them or starring or both.
The man makes movies for an audience of one, and it's me. That's all I know. All right, let's talk about Paul Walter Hauser. I did not realize that he'd been acting since 2005. He had roles in Community, Always Sunny, and Key and Peele.
Neat.
Yeah. But I first discovered him in the underrated MMA drama Kingdom around 2015. I think he was a big part of the second season.
Oh.
That's a cool little show. His breakout was his 2017 role in I, Tonya, which garnered critical acclaim. And then he had a great 2018 role in Black Klansman, if you recall.
You know what? I started that movie and I never watched it. Now I've got another reason to go back.
Yeah. Since then, he's had roles in The Five Bloods, Cruella, Queen Pins, The Instigators. I somehow don't remember him in that movie at all, but that movie is like the Men in Black laser pointer thing that wipes your memory. I cannot remember. I think I watched that movie twice just to prove to myself it's a real thing that exists, and I don't remember a single thing about it.
Still don't know anything. Interesting.
He was in Fantastic Four First Steps. He was Mole Man. He was great in that. Excited for him to be in the MCU. He, of course, was in the recent Naked Gun. That was a big hit.
Yeah.
And he was also in Deliver Me From Nowhere, the Bruce Springsteen biopic from this past year.
Again, another movie I didn't watch enough of to catch him.
I know it was kind of slammed, but I liked it. I think I talked about this on the pod, but I think they're just starting to make biopics about artists I care about.
That could be it.
The old ones were like maybe just a generation too old for me to have any real connection to.
Right.
But like Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen, yeah, I know who those guys are. I know their songs. I like their whole thing. So
yeah, I'm kind of more into those guys than Elton John, for example.
Yeah, or even Queen. I know their songs, but I wasn't super invested in them.
I would have been more invested if that movie was better.
Fuck Bryan Singer, obviously. So those are mostly supporting roles, but he has starred in a few movies. He was just in Americana with Sydney Sweeney, Balls Up with Mark Wahlberg.
Okay.
And the previously discussed Luckiest Man in America. Really like that one. Check that out. He's also been busy on TV. He had roles in Cobra Kai, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Of course, I Think You Should Leave, which we just talked about. Blackbird, The After Party. He was a big part of season 2 of The After Party.
Cool.
Bupkis. And he'll next appear in Jackass, Best and Last. I'm excited to see him in that.
Oh.
Resident Evil and Deep Eddy. And he's also a pretty good pro wrestler.
Like he's out there really doing moves?
He's out there. He's not like a sideshow. He is a trained pro wrestler, winning titles in independent promotions.
I had no idea.
He's gotten in great shape recently. He's moving around the ring like a bat out of hell. He's 39. He's the same age I am. No, I'm 40 now. I just turned 40 like a week ago.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. But he's like a good pro wrestler. I saw like some clips of him discussing pro wrestling and I was like, oh, that's cool. He's a fan. I guess he went on an interview show and then I looked into it a little deeper. Like, no, he is out there wrestling matches.
Jumping off top ropes and all that stuff?
All that shit. Yeah.
Damn.
I think he's even bladed a couple times, you know, when they sneak a little cut on their forehead.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
While the other Hollywood movie stars are Botoxing their foreheads, he is fucking slicing his open.
He's going the other way. Yeah. Truly one of my faves right now. Just like a guy I'm I'm very excited to watch his career and see where he goes next. We did talk about Sam Rockwell not that long ago with Argyle, so I didn't want to spend too much time on him. I just wanted to focus on some new developments, namely Wild Horse 9, which I guess is getting Best Picture buzz already. It's the new Martin McDonagh film starring Rockwell and John Malkovich as hitmen. And it's giving me very In Bruges vibes, which a Sam Rockwell type in an In Bruges type movie is a perfect marriage in my mind.
For sure.
So I'm really excited about that one. And also Ray Gun. I also brought his most recent film to show and tell, Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, a movie that we sadly can cover on this podcast if we want.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember you bringing that in and I'm like, oh, that looks like a fun Rockwell performance. And I haven't queued it up yet, but I'm tempted.
Definitely a fun Rockwell performance. The movie is pretty flawed overall, but he's great in it. And it was also cool just to see Gore Verbinski making shit again. He's been pretty dormant for a while. All right. So that is Richard Jewell. Now, Ian, have you checked the list? Do you know what's coming next?
No, I am a blank slate as usual.
I'm very excited about this one, both because the movie is batshit crazy and because it will give me a chance to express one of my most controversial hot takes. We're going to be discussing the 2005 Keira Knightley film, Domino.
Oh.
Directed by Tony Scott, a.k.a. the better Scott brother.
Yes, your hottest take. Your hottest.
That is my hottest take.
In some circles, people start to throw hands when that take comes out.
It has led to many arguments, particularly with my friend Matt, and I stand by it. We're going to dive into his filmography for a pretty bad movie, but don't let that distract you because Ridley Scott's made plenty of them too. That Tony Scott was RIP to the GOAT, truly a master of cinema.
Well, I'm coming into this neutral. I don't know anything about Domino. I haven't really picked a side in the Scott brothers rivalry, and this will be fun to just see what this is about.
By all accounts, they were not rivals. It's just me manufacturing drama.
Yeah, no, the rivalry is artificial. It just centers around your house.
Yeah, after like 7 beers, somebody brings up Tony Scott. I'm like, he's actually the better Scott brother. And then it turns into a whole thing. So that'll be fun to dissect, not only on the podcast, but also sober.
Yes.
Because I don't know how many times I've actually tried to defend this position while sober.
Okay.
That might help or hurt my chances of making a case.
Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the pod if you can. It helps new listeners find us. We appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter or Blue Sky at BlastZonePod. We be posting sometimes.
Fun thing to do.
You can email us at blastzonepod@gmail.com if you have any questions, feedback, movie recommendations, just want to talk about movies. We love hearing from you guys.
Always nice.
And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.